Well, today, love is definable. One day, a little girl was watching her mom make roast beef. She cut off the ends, wrapped it in a string, seasoned it, and set it in a roasting pan. The little girl was asked her mom why she cut off the ends of the roast. Mom replied, after some thought, that it was the way her mother had done it. And that night, Grandma came to dinner, and the little girl and her mom went to her and asked why she cut off the ends of the roast before cooking it. After some thought, Grandma replied, well, that was the way her mother had done it. Now, great-grandma was quite old and in a nursing home, but the little girl went with her mom and Grandma to see her again and asked the question, why do you cut off the ends of your roast? Great-grandma looked at them a little bit annoyed and said, so it would fit in the pan. It's amazing the traditions we carry on. But love today, I'm going to say that love is a lot like cooking. See, you either cook like you saw it done, or you cook by the recipe. And see, that's the problem you're having with love and the problem you have about love. You are doing it like you saw it done. And if that situation is a bad situation, maybe you had a difficult relationship with your father, or you had a difficult relationship with your first marriage, or all the other relationships you had, and you've only seen it done this way, you're doing love like you saw it, that's going to set you up for bad. Maybe the opposite is also true. Maybe you saw your mom and you watched her take care of your dad when he got sick, and you watched her nurture him and just be more than a nurse, be a helpmate and take care of your father. You saw a living example of what love is. Either way, you're either doing love like most people cook. You're either doing it how you saw it done, or you're going to do it by the recipe. Let me give you an example today, this week, of what happened in the news. Paula Deen. Now, here's something about Paula Deen. She's famous for how she cooks, and that she doesn't necessarily do things by recipe. She uses a lot of lard and everything. And she does things by the way she saw her mom and her grandma cook. Now, if you follow the news, you also know that she got in a lot of trouble this week and lost a lot of sponsorships and lost a lot of money because in a trial it was revealed that she uses the N-word a lot in her private. And she sort of said in her video today, I talk that way because that's what I saw. She's in her 60s in this deep south and said, well, that's just how I was raised and I saw it. See, you're either going to do love by how you saw it. And how many things have you picked up if you think back on your accent, your terms, even good or bad habits have you picked up from your parents? You're either going to do it by how you saw it or you're going to do it by the recipe. And today I want you to do love not by how you saw it. Maybe even if you saw it good, but most of us have not seen love the correct way. I want you to do love not by how you saw it. I want you to do love by the letter, by the recipe that God intended love to look like. If you're taking notes, our first love lesson is this. Love is not defined by one moment. It's not defined by one moment. Whether that moment be bad. Ladies, God bless you, I love you, but sometimes ladies have a hard time letting go of things. You see, your husband says all these wonderful things to you, but he makes one comment, and it was 20 years ago, and you're still remembering it, and you're still holding on. 99% of what he does or says is good, but he made one mistake. He said one thing he shouldn't have. Love is not defined by one moment. Gentlemen, they flip it also on you, even in the good moments. I've known young men, oh, I had a great date. She's the one, Pastor Steve. Well, look, love is more than just one date. And by the way, gentlemen, love is more than just one sexual experience. Women will equate sex with love, and men will substitute sex for love. And ladies, you need to understand that that's one of the rare times a man can be open and vulnerable. And it's often said that there's men that are addicted to sex. And let's not get into that discussion, whether or not that's true or not or anything. But I can tell you what every man is addicted to. Love. Every man is a human being, and every human being wants to be loved. And so it's not necessarily that a man is looking for physical contact. A man is looking for the only opportunity he has to be real and open and experience love. Next love lesson. Love is not defined by the physical. It takes us right into this. It's not defined by the physical. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 gives us a lot of verses. But it says this in the marriage relationships, your body is not your own. Your body doesn't belong to you, his body doesn't belong to him. That tells me a couple things. First of all, it tells me some of the headaches need to stop. Well, Pastor Steve, I just don't know. Love is not defined by the physical, but there's a physical attribute, there's a physical correspondent that happens with love. But with that, sex isn't a weapon. Well, I'll do this if he... No, sex isn't a weapon. Sex isn't a chore. Well, we have to... No, wait. What's happened there? But sex also isn't a bride. What it is, it's the glue that binds two people together. Read Genesis and talk about how Adam and Eve clave to each other. What that glue in that relationship is the sexual, physical intimacy between a man and a woman. And that's the problem you're having in your marriage. You shared that repeatedly with other people, and you've loosened the glue that's taken place. And let me say this to you. Maybe if you're here and you say, Pastor, that's my past, let me tell you what God is. Forgiving. You and your husband take some time, maybe ask God to forgive. Maybe you one-on-one with God, talk to God and forgive, because God is a God of miracles and of healing. Amen?
Amen.
But that's that physical. Young people, this is awkward for you to hear. My daughter and son are in the crowd, but it's awkward for you to hear, so it's awkward for me to say. Every survey, non-Christian, public, everything, says that the best sexual relationship that people have are people who have limited their number of sexual partners and who are monogamous for year after year after year after year. That's the exact way God intended it to be. Because sex is not defined by the physical, but it is the glue that helps cleave a relationship together. Next love lesson. Love is defined by sacrifice. It's defined by sacrifice. Let me give you an example here. A verse of the Bible. This is Jesus really talking about himself. But greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Now, usually the people that get this the most, the best at sacrificing, and when you think of a relationship that is sacrificial, most of us, even maybe after a couple minutes, but most of us immediately go to mom. Who sacrifices more than a mom? Just to bring you into the world, she sacrifices her body. She risks her own life to bring you here. No one sacrifices more, and no one knows more about sacrifice than a mom. With that in mind, let me introduce you to the worst person on the planet. Her name is Isabella Dutton. And she wrote an article in England a couple months ago, and it got a lot of headlines. And what it says is basically her biggest regret in life is being a mother. And she went on and on about how childhood, being a mother, ruined her life. Now she's an older lady and her kids are all grown. And here's part of her opening phrase. My son Stuart was 5 days old when the realization hit me like a physical blow. Having a child had been the greatest mistake of my life. Even now, 33 years later, I can still picture the scene. Stuart was asleep in his crib. He was due to be fed, but hadn't yet woken. I heard him stir, but as I looked at his face on a brink of wakefulness, I felt no bond, no warm rush of maternal affection. I felt completely detached from this alien being who had encroached upon my settled married life and changed it irrecoverably for the worse.
That's horrible.
The worst person on the planet, baby. See, love is defined by sacrifice. May I say to you, the reason this lady would write that, even 33 years later, how would you like to be the two kids? There's a picture of her two kids. How would you like to be those kids as adults reading this article that your mom wrote, that the worst thing she ever had happen to her life was you? The reason she would write that is because we are in a culture, a society, a world that has no idea what love is. See, she thought love in a child would bring to her. And every parent in here really knows kids don't bring anything into your life. They don't. They bring sacrifice. They bring a struggle. But when you love something, you will sacrifice for it. Love is defined by the sacrifice. This isn't a love lesson, but it's just sort of a point. Love is not defined by what you get. It's defined by what you give. And boy, is that a big struggle in your marriage. See, I don't often do this, but last week I would suggest, if you weren't here watching the message on YouTube that I did, I think it was probably one of the best messages I've ever done, definitely on relationships. But love is not defined by what you get, it's defined by what you give. And that's the struggle you're having in your marriage. Because you'll come to meeting with a whole list of things she's not doing, or a whole list of things he's not doing. And you're saying they should be doing, they should be doing. That's not love. That's a contract. Love is you coming to me with your list of all the things you're doing for them. Our last love lesson, love is a decision to give. I choose to do it. Love is a choice. And by the way, can I just say this? Love is really not the best reason to stay married. And by the way, love is probably not the best reason to get married. I love the Pittsburgh Steelers. It'd be an awkward wedding, especially since they keep cutting players that I like. But love is a decision. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, we often call it the love chapter. And it's going to show us what love is. We're going to look at 4 things. We've already looked at one last week. We said that love is explosive, first 3 verses of the chapter. Today we're going to look at it's definable. Next week we'll look at love is crazy. You must be crazy to be in love. And love, lastly, will be the result. The first 3 verses we looked at last week showed the emptiness of love. The emptiness of anything without love, and particularly serving God. And maybe this is the problem in your marriage. Maybe this is the problem in your family. This is the problem you're having with your dad or your sister or your child, is that there is no love inside it. Today, in the next 4 verses, we're going to look at the recipe, the definition of what love is. And we're going to give you 15 things that love is and it's defined by. Maybe your marriage problem is that you think love is defined by all sorts of other things. And as we go through this relationship that you have, you're going to find out that maybe what you're really missing is true, real love. The definition of love. Look at verse 4 of 1 Corinthians. The very first word, I'm reading the King James, says charity. Let me rephrase it again. Let me tell you what we talked about last week. Charity, I feel, is one of the reasons I use the King James. This is a better word than just love. Because charity is a giving love. It's a love that expects nothing in return. It's a love that is unconditional and gives completely everything they have. And see, you think love is she does this for me or he does this for me, or you think love is something you fall into. That's what the world will tell you. Love, I was just going, and it's, you don't just walk along the street and all of a sudden go, thud. What happened? I just fell into love. No, that's not love, that's a pothole. All right? Love isn't something you fall into. It's definable and it's a choice. So the first ingredient, look here. I'm going to read King James words and then I'm going to put up the definition up on the screen. The first ingredient of love, suffereth long, in verse 4. Love is, first, patient. I love you, so let's have sex. No, that's lust. Love is, I love you, so we'll wait. Love is, I love you, so I will be patient with your mistakes. And so Pastor Steve, he does this and it just makes me so mad, or she does this, or my dad did this and he's gone out of my life. That's not love. Love is patient. Yes, it's patient physically with the sexual part, but love is also patient as a person adapts and deals with their own issues. I patiently even forgive you. Next ingredient. And is kind. No abuse. Let me take a time out here for a moment. Girls, maybe even ladies, no one has a right to put their hands on you in any sort of violent or physical way. Amen, gentlemen?
Amen.
And every now and then you see somebody like on the Jerry Springer show. But I love him, Jerry. He sold the kids. But I love him. He slept with your mother. But I love him, Jerry. He physically hit you. I love him, Jerry. He put cigarette butts out on you. But I love him. Love does not abuse someone. Love will not also ask you to do something that you're uncomfortable with. Love is patient, and it doesn't abuse. The next ingredient, charity, or love, envieth not. Love is not jealous. You should have boundaries in your marriage. You should have boundaries in your relationship. The only people who fear accountability are the people who are doing something wrong. In my wife and I's relationship, she can read my emails. She can read my text messages unless it's somebody counseling with me. And I don't counsel a woman alone. I don't go to lunch with a lady or even just to meet her there. I limit my time in this building as much as possible. When there's a lady in here, I have no opposite gender friends that don't include my wife in that list. I go on and on. We put up boundaries, okay, because we protect each other and we have boundaries. But love is secure. Girls, if he's always sending, like, where are you now? What are you doing? What is he doing? Who is that just talked to you? That's my brother. What is wrong with you? That's not love. That's control. And a lot of people will substitute control for love, just like a lot of people will substitute love and sex. Love is not jealous. It puts up boundaries, but it's not jealous. Next ingredient, look back at verse 4. Charity or love vaunteth not itself. What does that mean? Love does not boast. Love is confident. Insecure people boast. The guys who do the most talking are the guys who don't know what they're doing. Next ingredient, verse 4, is not puffed up. Love does not have pride. If you can't say you're wrong or you're sorry, the reason you can't do it is because of your pride. And in your relationship, whether it be your relationship with your father, or your relationship with your husband, or your relationship with your family, any person that you say you love, and you say, I just can't say I'm wrong. I instantaneously become Fonzie. Remember in the 70s, some of you? Wrong. I can't say that I'm wrong, right? I can't apologize. Why? Because you have too much pride. Love has no pride. Next, verse 5. Doth not behave itself unseemly. Love is not rude or indecent. Love shouldn't make you feel like you need a shower, because it will not ask you to do something that is indecent or diminishes you as a person or makes you feel less as a human being. Young people, the world will make you feel dirty and used. But love should never do that. In a marriage, that physical, sexual part of a marriage, it should always make both people feel honored and feel worthy. If it makes you feel wrong, then you shouldn't be doing it. So, well, Pastor Stephen, 1 Corinthians 7 talks about our bodies are not our own. No, listen. If you love her, you won't make her feel that way. If you love him, you won't make him feel that way. Next ingredient, seeketh not her own. By the way, if you notice that the Apostle Paul gives love a female term. Love is not selfish. You get up thinking about that person. You want to correct your marriage? You want to see a miracle in your marriage? I mean, you can come forward. We can pray over you. The elders can come, anoint your head with oil, all sorts of stuff. I can give you a really simple definition, a really simple method to carry a miracle in your marriage. Get up tomorrow thinking nothing about how you can make her happy. Get up tomorrow thinking nothing about how you can make him happy. Because love is not selfish. It's focused on the other person, and you cannot focus on someone else when you're focused on you. Next ingredient is not easily provoked. Here's a big one. Love is not angered. Anger is a big problem in our country today, especially with young men. And I will tell you the two ingredients why so many young men are angry. You may find somebody that's altered with this, but you find a guy who's hard, you find someone who's got a chip on his shoulder, who has a front. The two reasons. Number one is pornography. Pornography creates anger. Don't let anyone tell you differently, that there are no victims in pornography. The people who watch it are victims. The people who perform it are victims. Pornography creates anger. It also makes a young man or a man see a woman not as a human being, but as an object. That is a huge issue. Because once you're not a human being but an object, it's easy to kill you, it's easy to rape you, it's easy to push you around, it's easy to treat you as less than a human being. Pornography. Number 2 reason why so many young men are angry, father issues. They either didn't have a father, or the father they had was abusive, or the father that they had was distant from them. Now listen, a lot of young men go through some of these things, and like father issues, they're 16 and they have a really good dad, but yet they just don't know how to relate. They eventually grow out of that anger, and that passes by, and they become sort of mature, and they realize what their dad is doing and try to correct them. So maybe that's a temporary situation. But you see so many angry young men. You know why they're angry? Love. Remember, men will exchange or think that sex and love is the same thing. And men who have not experienced a gentle hand by a father, not experienced the guidance of a dad, will get very angry. When there is no love, there is anger. Next ingredient, thinketh no evil. Love is pure. Love doesn't have baggage. People have baggage. Your past relationships have baggage. Lust has baggage. All sorts of sin creates baggage, but love is pure. Next ingredient, verse 6, rejoices not in iniquity. What that means, love hates sin. It hates what it does. It hates what it causes to people. It hates that it comes into a relationship and destroys it. Next, but rejoices the truth. Love is honest. Love is honest. Real simple. If you have to lie about it, or you have to lie to him, or you have to lie about what's happening and taking place, young people, if you have to hide it from your parents, it's not love. Because love is honest. I talked with a young man recently, and he was talking about his fiancée, or wanting to be fiancée. He was going to talk to her parents. I said, what do you think the response is going to be? He said, well, I'm not really sure. And I said, can I just tell you my opinion? I said, you take it for what it's worth. If her dad says no, don't get married. Well, I said, just don't get married. I didn't say don't ever get married. I said, don't get married. I said, maybe he sees something that you don't see. Maybe you need a little more time. But if it's the right person now, it should be the right person a year from now. And I want to tell you something. If it was my daughter and I said no, and you said yes, sir, and you respected that, your stock just rose in my eyes. I would think, what an amazing man. And I would reevaluate you if I thought there was some reason for saying no. But he said, well, what if we just don't tell them? Love is honest. It's open. There are no secrets. You say, well, I'm in love, but nobody can know. That's not love. Love wants to broadcast it to the world. Love puts it on Facebook. Verse 7, the next ingredient, beareth all things. Love protects. You love your wife and kids? Boy, I hope the answer is yes. You love your wife, you love your kids, and if I physically, I'll just take me, came up and tried to hurt your wife, you would stop me. If I tried to hurt one of your children physically, you would stop me because you want to protect them physically. Well, then let's take it and turn it around, and let's turn it towards all the sin and the garbage and the pollution that the world brings into your family. Love protects your home. Sir, sometimes you have to say, no, we're not going to watch that. No, that's not coming in our house. No, we're not going there. No, we're doing this differently. And sometimes you're going to have to be the one to put your foot down and say, well, you're just trying to turn me into some Till of the Hunt. No, these types of events happen maybe 2 or 3 times in a marriage. But somebody has to protect the home, and God has made you as the protector, sir. Love protects. Next ingredient, believeth all things. Love trust. I can trust you. By the way, I put it in the center there. The center of a good love relationship, whether it be marriage or whether it be your father or whether it be your cousin, the center of all love relationships, of a strong relationship, is trust. When there's not trust, you don't talk to the person, you don't tell them what you think because you can't trust them. You can't openly and be honest about who you are and just say, well, this is who I am, because you don't trust the response they're going to get. The center of every good relationship, of all love, is trust. Next, hopeth all things. Love gives hope. And lastly, the last ingredient, last part of verse 7, and endureth all things. Love lasts forever. This is love. This is what's missing in your marriage. This is what's missing in so many of those close, intimate relationships you're trying to have with people. And you would say, well, I love them, but it just doesn't seem like it's working. It doesn't seem like it's connecting. Something seems wrong. The reason you're doing what you saw. And just like a cook who saw their mother cook a certain way or their father, and they're just cooking that same recipe the same way they saw it, you're not following the master chef's ultimate recipe for what love is, and that master chef is God. Where do you start then? Where do you start? The greatest source of love, for God so loved the world, that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. How can you give away something you do not have? How can you experience with someone else the experience you have never yet seen, or the experience you've never yet created? The way to love someone else is first to experience the greatest love you'll ever experience. And that greatest love is that God loved you so much that He sent His Son to die on the cross for you. He lived 33 years of sinless life. He was God and man completely. He was God's Son and the second part of the Trinity. And He died on the cross for you and for me, for your sin. And 3 days later, He rose from the grave. The greatest example of love, of all of these things, of patience, of not hating, of not being angry, of no pride. The greatest example that I can give you that you must experience first is what Jesus did on the cross for you. How can you give what you do not have? How can you experience with someone else until you've truly experienced it yourself? Because love is what Jesus did for you. Last week we said, husbands, love your wife like you're worshiping God. As if the only way your wife can experience the love that God has is through you physically. Wives, worship God through respecting your husband, because that's what every man craves from his wife. And respect him like the only way your husband could ever experience the approval of God is through you. And when you in so do this, you will find that the love is the greatest form of worship. And when God is the center pin and is the reason why you honor and love your husband, when God is the reason why you protect and love your wife and treat her like Jesus treats the church, when that happens, then when the kids move out, God is still there. That happens when your husband becomes a jerk and gets old and gets cranky and gets bitter by this world. You are no longer loving him because of him. You are loving him as a form of worship. That happens when your wife gets mad at you and gets bitter and gets, Pastor, I don't know how I can do this. Well, you're no longer loving her for what she brings. You are now loving her as a form of worship. You are now expressing to her, even though she has turned her back on you, like we turn our backs on God, even though she has turned her back on you, you are still loving her. Amen? When you've experienced this love, and the greatest marriage is the two people who meet at the cross and who are no longer doing it because of the other person, but are doing it as a form of worship for their God because He first loved you. And now you are taking that love and giving it to another person and showing them and being God in skin, Jesus in flesh. The only way your wife will experience the love of God is through you. The only way your husband will experience the approval of God is through the approval of you. And when you finally do that, you will find what the last part of verse 8 says this, or the beginning part of verse 8. Charity never faileth. Love never fails. Men, every guy in here who's been dated or been married knows that women like chick flicks. They like those girl movies. And they all start the same way. There's something, she's a judge just looking for love, and she's, a single mom who's going to draw this. And how can she love when she's got a son? And Jerry Maguire comes in. Whatever. Ladies love chick. I hate them. I hate it because they're so unrealistic. That all of your problems can be solved, and ladies, all of your problems can be solved in 90 minutes, and if you have the right man. How talking down to you is it? But what I hate about chick flicks the most, and ladies love the romance, is that how untrue they are. Love is not a fairy tale. It doesn't magically happen. Love is hard work. It requires two people to be sacrificing and giving. And you can either keep doing love by what you saw, or you can take the 15 ingredients we looked at today, God's recipe for true love, and start applying it. Every head bowed and every eye closed.